want to welcome everyone today to the North Central IPM Center Pests in Progress webinar series. And our talk today will be EIP highlights for North Dakota with Janet Knodel. I am Lene Jess. I'm one of the co-directors for the North Central IPM Center, and we are one of 4 regional IPM centers that are supported by USDA NIFA through the Crop Protection and Pest Management Regional Coordination Program. If you would have questions during the webinar, please post them in the Q&A that's at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then we'll do all the questions at the end of the webinar. Today, we'd like to welcome Dr. Janet Knodel. She's a professor and extension entomologist at North Dakota State University. And again, her title of her talk is EIP Highlights for North Dakota. I will be posting some links to some of her websites and stuff in the chat while she's talking, so you can look for those there. Thank you, Janet, for coming on today.
Thank you very much for the invite, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about the EIP here in North Dakota. So first, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of overview on who's involved in the program. I'm the PI of the EIP grant, and then I'm also active on the committees for the International IPM Symposium and the North Central IPM Multi-State Group, NCR 222. In the lower corner photograph, that's Pat Bose. He's our state IPM coordinator, and he's also active in the NCR 222 group and was the past chair. And he's also been on the National IPM Coordinating Committee and the past chair, and he was re-elected to be the incoming chair. So we have 4 priority areas that we work on. 2 of the primary are agronomic crops and pollinator health. The secondary priority areas are pesticide applicators and diagnostic laboratory. And we'll go through each one and just give you an overview of what we're doing. Okay, for the agronomics crop, this is our largest one, objective, I should say. And we have our IPM crop survey. So we hire IPM scouts throughout the state, and they survey wheat, barley, soybean, sunflower for both insects and diseases. And we also do some exotic pest work with the North Dakota Department of Ag, where we look for certain pests that are of concern in wheat. And we do some insect pest trapping in wheat and sunflower. And then, of course, our final objective is outreach, which we do a lot of in extension and for the commodity groups here in North Dakota, as agriculture is one of our leading industries here. So this is a map of North Dakota, and it's all divided up by RECs, Research Extension Centers. And we'll get started and go through all the people involved. Here is the main campus at Fargo, NDSU. And this is Dr. Andrew Friskop. He's a plant pathologist and works on diseases of wheat and barley and corn. And this is Dr. Sam Markell, and he works primarily on diseases of soybean and sunflower. And here's Pat, our IPM coordinator. Okay, let's move northward. Carrington is in the east central area of North Dakota. And this is Greg Endress, and he supervises 1 IPM scout at the Carrington REC. And then Langdon, way up in the northeast, we have Dr. Anitha Chirmamilla, and she supervises 1 scout and insect trapper. Going way over to the southwest region of North Dakota, this is Mr. Ryan Buteau from Dickinson REC, and he has 1 IPM scout. And at Minot North Central REC, Dr. TJ Prasashka, and he has one scout and insect trapper. And then the current position at Williston REC is vacant, but we do have one scout who's coming back. He has about 4 years of experience, and he'll be coming back to help us out in the far northwest region. So that's the whole team, and it's all divided up by areas. So our scout here in Fargo would do all this area here that's kind of in a orange color, and so forth, blue for the Carrington scout. So we divided up, that makes it a little more equal for everyone to get out in the state and cover their territory. And finally, but not least, we have Darla Bacco in the main office of the Department of Plant Pathology, and she handles all the payroll, time slips, travel, and getting a lot of the paperwork ready for the IPM scouting program. And then finally, my mapper, Dr. Boo. So here's the pheromone trapping for the insect pest. We do wheat, midge, black cutworm, and true armyworm in wheat, and we use primarily the wing trap. And then we have several pests of sunflowers that are economically important. In sunflower here, they consume the kernel and the seed. So we trap for these 3 moths as well. And we have a scouting calendar by crop for the scouts, so they know when to be looking for different insects and diseases. For example, wheat, they would start with grasshoppers, cereal aphids, and cereal leaf beetles. Most of our scouts start early June and they go through mid-August. And then a little bit later in the season, we pick up wheat stem sawfly, wheat stem maggot, and wheat midge trapping. And then the black armyworm and blackworm trapping is a little bit earlier. For the diseases, we start with all the leaf diseases, tan spot and Sartoria. And then in July, we head up to the head diseases, scab and ergot. And it's pretty much similar for barley, except there's a couple different insects and diseases, barley thrips and net blotch. For soybean, we focus mainly on just the insects, since we don't have a lot of economic leaf diseases yet. Being leaf beetle, grasshopper, and soybean aphids are some of our key insects we look for, and then spider mites a little bit later in the season. For sunflower, it's grasshopper again early on, and then the trapping for the moths. And red sunflower seed weevil emerges in July, so we pick up that. For diseases early on, downy mildew, and then sunflower rust and verticillium wilt. And here's the wheat midge pheromone trapping for North Dakota. This last year, we had 22 traps out in 19 counties. For wheat midge, we use this Delta trap. And then we collaborate with Montana State University and enter the information into their system called Pest Web. And then this is real-time data. So as soon as the scout enters it, it goes up onto the website, and you can see its cumulative midge counts. So the red would indicate higher numbers of midge. And where you see the diagonal slashing or lines, that indicates a parasitic wasp is present and was picked up in the trap. And if you click on that balloon, you can get more information and actually see a graph of the populations and see when it peaked. So we follow a general field scouting procedure for most of the crops. We do have some specifics for some of them, but it's generally, walking the standard W pattern in the field, sampling multiple locations, usually 5 sites, and looking at 10 plants. So if we were recording, for example, the incidence of the pest, we would, have a total of 50 observations, and then we'd multiply times 2 to get the incidence. And then all of our data goes onto these field scouting cards, which all the scouts have. And this would be like one field. And then it's also on the back. There's more information the scout needs to record. But it has the 5 little dashed lines here for the scout to record what they observed at each site, and then they calculate an average. Now, then all this gets entered into an Excel sheet. Then we also have a handy scouting guide by crop, so they're able to, look at the procedures before they go out into the field. And we also train them and work with them. The reason why we have the supervisors at the RECs is so they can make sure the scouts are following our standardized protocol and answer any questions they have. And we have webinars throughout the season and visit with the scouts bi-weekly to answer any of their questions and to review what they should be doing. And of course, we are moving towards apps for entering all this data. In fact, I have a webinar at 2 right after I get off this, and I'll be talking to a person about this. So we do collaborate closely with the North Dakota Department of Ag for invasive insect pest diseases and nematodes. We do soil sampling for the nematodes, pheromone trapping for the old world bollworm, and then we visually inspect the fields wheat only for black stem rust, flag smut, and dwarf butt. And I know the rust gets sent to the University of Minnesota lab for confirmation. So all this would be confirmed by expert before, if they do find these symptoms in the field. Then we also had barberry eradicated from the state of North Dakota in the shelter belts. So we have the scouts look in the shelter belts while they're in the fields to see if they can find any. And so far we haven't. So what's all this data used for? Well, it's very important for our NDSU Extension crop and pest reports. So the information goes into the newsletters. We can report occurrence of migrating insect pests that come up into the state. And then also when we're seeing peak populations where it's really critical to get out there and scout. And then we post the maps weekly on our IPM website. And here's an example. And you can see quickly, where the hot spots are in the state from looking at the maps. And it's a good alert system. And then many of the maps end up in our newsletter. And then we've used the exotic pest data for regulatory issues and to support export of North Dakota commodities, namely wheat. So here's some maps, and I use this as an extension entomologist just to see when, some years are low years, other years are high years for insect pests and diseases. So this information historically is very important and helps us determine the highs and lows of the insect or disease, and if it relates to weather. We have our NDON weather system that we could relate the occurrence of the pest. And then finally, the education. We do a lot of extension meetings and indirect activities through radio, TV, press release. And this is just what I pulled off our recent report that went into NIFA for the last 6 months. And then we do go to professional meetings and have many extension meetings in schools for training on IPM techniques. And here's Pat talking about the wheat insects. Videos and podcasts and extension publications have all been part of our EIP effort. We went to the International IPM Symposium, and Pat presented our infographic in Denver, and this kind of summarized our IPM crop survey and some of our impacts. And I'm always impressed with our scouts. They did over 600 fields just last year. And here's some publications. Some of these are supported by our commodity groups, and then others were supported by our EIP grant. So it's great to have that alternative source of funding. And here's some of the newer ones that just came out, but we're constantly trying to upgrade and revise our old publications as well. And our growers still like hard copies. I know a lot of universities have gone just to electronic, but they like to see the hard copies at our meetings. And one thing I can say for sure is that really has enhanced collaborations, this EIP grant. We collaborate with the University of Minnesota Extension on the IPM crop survey. It's mainly in the western part of the state, and they survey in wheat and soybeans. And then the University of Montana with Pest Web for wheat midge trapping. And then several of the state specialists gave crop webinars to the Ukraine Agriculture Crop Production Council back then, and we all talked about IPM and pest management at that. My heart goes out to the Ukraine now with the war. And then we mentor many of the undergraduate students who are IPM scouts and insect trappers. Many of them have been excellent in their role, and they go on to graduate school and actually have become university faculty members or work for chemical companies or local agronomy companies. And others have gone into some other excellent professions, lawyer and veterinarian. So we've been lucky. We've had some very talented scouts. Some short-term impacts is we've had an increase in knowledge about IPM, and this was based on a survey of our readers of the Crop and Pest Report. And also we've had increased timeliness of getting IPM information out to our audiences. And then also many of the readers regard our newsletter as a major source of information on crop and pest management. And they liked our trapping. 65% said they used the trapping data to help know when they should be going out to scout fields. Some midterm actions, behavior. People are doing insect identification now. They're also scouting, and they're using our pest management maps, our IPM maps, and using thresholds. So we're very happy to see this fairly high level of behavior from our audiences. And most of our readers are pest consultants and growers. Long-term changes, we've had producers said that the information helped them increase profitability. And then our collaboration with the North Dakota Department of Ag has actually facilitated $1.75 million worth of wheat and durum exports up into Canada from doing all that survey work. So moving on to the pollinator health, we're focusing on pollinator gardens and lawns is new. And then we also have outreach that we do with the EIP program, and then monarch and milkweed. And I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Esther McGinnis, our extension horticulturist and master gardener coordinator of North Dakota. She leads much of this, and we collaborate very closely together. So we continue to expand and certify gardens, certified pollinator gardens, as you can see in the sign here. Last year we had 17, but we're up to 174 right now. So the funding from EIP has been critical in helping to expand this program. And now we're kind of focusing and moving towards pollinator lawns. And this is a new objective for us on the new grant. Some impacts is we've really increased the number of gardens here for pollinators in North Dakota. So that's sort of been a midterm impact. A long-term impact is we had a total of 4.6 million square feet of gardens that were created as a result of this program. So we are hopefully providing food and habitat for the pollinators to help improve their health. And we're also doing monitoring for monarchs in North Dakota. This is a new project. We're collaborating with the Monarch Joint Venture in the University of Wisconsin. It's kind of a citizen science like project where they take the training there on the Monarch Joint Venture. And we're working primarily now with kind of like train the trainers, master gardeners, and extension agents who will work with the citizens. And then we're going to be looking for monarchs, the adult and the larvae. And if you don't have milkweed, we're encouraging you to plant the milkweed. And you can see why we need this. Here's the current information on the monarch larvae monitoring project that is on their website right now. You can see there's only a handful of sites in North Dakota. So we definitely need to increase that. I know there's a lot more monarchs flying through North Dakota and staying here than what this map shows. So we just want to increase learning about monarch butterfly biology and conservation, and also increase the number of observations that are going to be made, and then monitor for the larvae and the adult butterfly. So here's some of our pollinator extension resources, and the ones with the star here we did in collaboration with Michigan State University Extension and their pollinator team. So that was a lot of fun. And we've been have written quite a few resources here in North Dakota for the pollinators. Thanks to the EIP again for funding. Moving on to pesticide safety education. This is coordinated by Andrew Thorstensen, our pesticides program specialist. And we decided we would focus on IPM modules for this part of our EIP. And so last year I did invasive insects and pyrethroid insecticide resistance. And this was delivered to all of our statewide trainings on pesticide applicators. So we're reaching quite a few people through these trainings, and they are required to go to get their certification. So it's a great way to get more IPM information out to the people who are applying pesticides. And we're right now developing a pesticide applicator survey to help determine some of the impacts. And then another secondary objective of the pesticide is our app, NDSU Pest Management app. And this is coordinated by Dr. Andrew Fiskrop. And right now we have 16 crops on the app and over 1,000 users. And there's many hyperlinks to IPM resources on this app. And new is the image gallery and pest identification help. So if you didn't know what a pest was, you could take a picture and it would go to the experts at NDSU, and they would get back to you with a correct identification and IPM management recommendations if you want. So let's select soybean, and then I'm an entomologist, so insects, and I want to learn about grasshoppers because it was a drought last year and we had quite a few problems. So you can get general information, which would bring up this screen, and you can scroll down here to get to grasshoppers. Or if you're just interested in the insecticides, you could go directly to foliar, and then you'd scroll down. I want that new insecticide from FMC, Vantacor, and it shows you the active ingredient, the restricted entry interval, the mode of action, 28, and its application rate, and the pre-harvest interval, PHI. And so you could get all the information you would need to make your insecticide application. However, if I wanted to go back to that information screen, I could scroll down to soybeans and grasshopper and then get information about the biology and also the thresholds. And then here's just a snapshot of the gallery. So, and finally, our last one is the diagnostic laboratory, and we really have been involved in this for proper pest identification, one of the keys of IPM. And they do a lot of samples and give out a lot of IPM information. And Pat and I both work closely with the insect ID and IPM stuff going out. So in this, having the EIP funding has really increased collaborations with other groups like the Great Plains Diagnostic Network and the National Pest Diagnostic Network. So it has helped us do more activities. And we did a survey for insects and people who brought in insects for ID, and 77% indicated they learned about IPM and how to manage that pest they brought in. And some midterms where 90% of the submitters were receptive to IPM strategies and actually using them when they went home. So we don't have this in our new grant, so we had some budget cuts, so we had to drop this objective, but we may bring it back in the future. So with that, I'd like to end and thank you all for your attention.
I have several questions for you. First one is, do your scouts come back each year, or are they usually new every year?
I'm sorry, my phone has gone out. There's some sort of emergency. Yes, they usually come back. We've been lucky. Most of them do come back every year. We've had some work 5-6 years. And we try to get them early when they're just starting in college as a freshman. So that way, and then we increase their salary each year and give them incentives. But you really do have to find the right person, someone who likes to work independently and someone who enjoys driving around the state. So yeah, we've been lucky that way. A lot of the people like the flexibility too. They can work 4 long days, so have 3-day weekends. So we try to be flexible and work with each scout and their needs.
So to go along with that is, what's the current hourly rate of your scouts?
Right now we've kind of increased it because McDonald's is paying a lot more in some other places. So we at least start them at 15, but it kind of varies throughout the state because we have the oil out in the western part of the state. So the pay is just a little bit higher out in that area. And our highest scout right now is making $18 an hour. Okay.
Do you charge the growers for scouting, or is that a free service to them?
No, we don't charge at all.
Okay. All right. One other question is, how did your program change because of COVID-19, or did you not have to change very much?
Yes, we didn't know if we were going to be able to have it or not, but NDSU fortunately would allow people to drive around in a car if they were by themselves. So we were able to, and then we did all the training remotely through Zoom. And then the supervisors out at the RECs, worked with the scouts closely throughout the season. If they didn't have a returning scout that was somewhat familiar with pests and diseases. But anyway, we added on this bi-weekly training, and then that was very popular. So we started doing that now. Every year we're doing the bi-weekly training. It gives the scout an opportunity to ask questions, and also gives us the opportunity to remind them on what they should be looking for, because it kind of varies throughout the year. So it is a lot for them to take in, especially that first year. And then we have to constant reminders, I guess, make the program, they do a better job, and they don't have to wonder what they should be doing. So yeah, it did increase our travel, because like when I would go out with the scout, I would drive a car too. So instead of taking one car to a field, we would end up taking two. So it did increase some of our expenses.
Okay. And then I think we have time for one more question. You talked about Ukraine early on. So they're a big exporter of sunflowers, I know. So do the North Dakota growers expect to plant more sunflowers this year, or do they think they're just going to stay about the same acreage?
Yes, we are planning to plant more sunflowers this year. So North Dakota and South Dakota are two leads in sunflower production. And so we are expecting, especially oil seed. I'm not sure about confection, but I have heard that there'll be a lot more sunflowers, and the prices are at record highs right now. So it's very attractive.
All right, great. So I have a couple minutes after the hours, so we usually try to keep it about half an hour. So I want to thank you again, Janet, for your talk. And I want everybody to know that our next webinar will be held on Wednesday, May 18th. Our speaker for that will be Erin Lazat with the Michigan State University EIP program. And then if you'd like to learn more about the North Central IPM Center, to get our newsletter or other things, you can find our website at ncipmc.org. So again, thank you, Janet, and I hope everybody has a great day.